It didn't slam. There was no echo, no warning sign, just quiet. And yet, everything changed. Some doors don't announce their closing. They don't creak or lock loudly behind you. They simply cease to be open. And only later do you realize it was the moment heaven intervened. Maybe that's where you are now, looking back at a moment that felt uneventful, but underneath held a sacred shift, a conversation that ended, a path that stopped unfolding, an opportunity that just disappeared. No explosion, no explanation, just the stillness of something not moving forward. And yet, that quiet exit may have saved you. There's a kind of grace that doesn't roar. It whispers. It reroutes. It protects not by opening a new way, but by gently closing the wrong one. Maybe you thought you missed it, that you failed, that you lost something vital. But what if the loss was the miracle? This moment, the one you're in right now, it carries clarity. Not because all your answers have arrived, but because you were meant to hear this. Now, there is a reason this whisper found you today. You didn't scroll here by accident. And that quiet door you keep staring at, it didn't close to punish you. It closed to protect you, to preserve you, to prepare you. Stay. Let's walk into what that means together. Because sometimes the doors that close quietly save you the loudest. You've been quiet lately, not because you don't care, but because you're tired. Tired of praying and hearing silence. Tired of hoping and being met with delay. There's a specific kind of ache that comes from closed doors. Not the ones that slam, but the ones that vanish when you thought they were finally opening. You gave it your best. You stayed soft. You waited with open hands, and still, it slipped away. Maybe no one sees how much you've been carrying, how much you've surrendered without applause. But God sees. Even now, He sees. And He sent this moment not to explain everything, but to hold you inside it, to remind you that not all divine movements are loud. Some come dressed in stillness, like this one. This video, this voice, this timing was appointed, not for entertainment, not for distraction, but for interruption, a sacred one. Because you didn't miss your moment. You didn't fall behind. You were being protected even from the things you thought were answers. So, take a deep breath. You don't have to figure it all out today. You don't have to force meaning from the mess. Just stay open, stay soft, stay near. And if this whisper found you at the right time, let it keep finding you. Stay close with us at Calm Called. So when the next quiet word comes, you're already listening. Subscribe now, and let's keep walking this unfolding together. We've been taught to look for God in the yes, in the open doors, in the answered prayers and visible breakthroughs. But sometimes, His mercy shows up as a closed gate. And that's hard to accept, especially when you were faithful, especially when it almost worked. There's something inside you that still aches for what didn't happen. You had dreams wrapped in that doorway, expectations, maybe even identity. And when it didn't open, or worse, half opened and then shut, You questioned everything. But what if God was answering you the whole time? Not with what you asked for, but with what your soul actually needed. A rescue you didn't recognize. A kindness that came in disguise. He doesn't always part the sea. Sometimes he redirects the boat. Sometimes he lets it drift, so you won't dock at the wrong harbor. That closed door might not have been rejection. It may have been preservation. It didn't fit the map you drew, but it aligned with the mercy you forgot to ask for. What if the answer was the silence? What if the protection was the delay? What if the real miracle was the ending? The rest of this journey will show you how. Stay, because once you start to see God in the know, your whole story shifts. You didn't see it coming, and even if you did, it wasn't the way you would have chosen. The exit came quietly or maybe all at once, but either way, it felt unauthorized, unfair, uninvited. You had plans. You were trying. You were showing up. Then suddenly gone. The job, the relationship, the support system, the version of your life you were just starting to understand. It felt like collapse, like being pulled from something mid-sentence. And maybe you're still standing in that aftermath, wondering what just happened. But heaven was never confused. You see, God doesn't need your approval to protect you. He needs your surrender. And sometimes that surrender begins with a door you didn't choose to close. We think divine guidance will always feel like peace, like flow, like confirmation. But what if it sometimes feels like evacuation? What if heaven sees something coming long before you do and rearranges the entire room to pull you out in time? That sudden goodbye, that missed call, 0-4, that uncomfortable shift, it might have been a divine exit plan hidden inside disruption. It's hard because you were emotionally invested. You weren't ready, but maybe God was. Maybe He was ready to pull you out before the fire started, before your spirit paid the price. This kind of rescue rarely feels like safety at first. It feels like grief, like confusion, like failure. But slowly, a new pattern starts to emerge. You begin to see what He saw. You begin to feel what He shielded you from. And even if you still don't understand all the reasons, you start to trust that they exist. The exit wasn't random. It was orchestrated. And your permission was never the point. Your protection was. There's a cost we rarely calculate. The spiritual price of staying somewhere too long. You might have been willing to carry the weight, to push through, to make it work, because you believed in it, because it once felt like home, because you didn't want to give up. But not everything you love is meant to be kept, and not everything you lose is meant to be mourned. God saw what it would have taken to hold on. The exhaustion, the compromise, the quiet erosion of your joy. You may have thought you were strong enough to endure it, but He never asked you to be. He didn't want you to prove your worth through suffering. He wanted to preserve your worth through protection. Some doors close not because you failed, but because the path ahead would have slowly unraveled your soul. And you wouldn't have noticed. Not right away. It would have come in subtle waves. Less laughter, more anxiety. Less presence, more pretending. until one day you looked in the mirror and couldn't find yourself anymore. So yes, it ended. Yes, it hurts. But the pain of this ending is lighter than the pain that would have followed staying. He saw what it would cost, and he said, "Enough." He said, "Not my child." That quiet closure you're still grieving, it may have been the loudest act of mercy in your life. So now the question isn't, why did it close? It's, what was I being spared from? And more deeply, what part of me is God determined to preserve? Because this wasn't punishment, it was preservation. And the cost you didn't have to pay, that was the miracle. You didn't know it then. You couldn't, because when everything began unraveling, it felt like chaos, not clarity, like disorientation, not design. But that was the moment. The shift, the turning. It didn't look like a breakthrough. It looked like collapse. And still, it was sacred. There are moments in life that don't reveal their meaning until much later. Moments that look like endings, but are actually divine realignments. You were rerouted, not rejected. You were covered, not cast aside. But in the middle of the shift, we rarely feel safe. We feel unanchored. We try to grab onto what was, because we can't yet see what's becoming. It's like walking into a room where all the lights suddenly go out. You freeze. You reach for what you remember, but the layout has changed. The familiar door is gone. Still, in that darkness, a new direction is forming. And sometimes God allows everything to shake so that only the right things remain. When you look back now, can you feel it? That subtle moment when the current shifted, when everything minutes seemed to fall apart, but something in your spirit whispered, "This is holy." The shift wasn't the enemy. It was the unveiling of strength, of truth, of a life you hadn't given yourself permission to imagine. God wasn't dismantling your life. He was recentering your soul. And sometimes, to rebuild what's eternal, He must first remove what's unsustainable. This was never just about survival. It was about sacred realignment, so that you could finally live aligned with heaven, not just expectations. 8. You didn't lose the path. You were set on the right one. You just didn't recognize it at first. Now you do. Now, you see, that moment wasn't a breakdown. It was the quiet beginning of everything new. It's tempting to keep looking back, to replay the scene, to analyze what you could have said differently, done better, held longer. But the door is closed, and maybe the most sacred thing you can do now is bless it. Not all closure comes with clarity. Not every goodbye brings resolution. Sometimes the ending just is. But that doesn't mean it can't be holy. Holiness isn't always dramatic. It isn't loud or obvious. Sometimes it's the quiet act of releasing something with reverence. Even while your heart still aches, God sees what you're holding on to. He sees the memory, the questions, the fragments of identity that were tied to that path. And He's not rushing you, but He is inviting you to reframe the ending, to anoint the threshold, to call the closing sacred even without the full explanation. Will you let that door be holy? Not because it felt good, but because it was good for you. Because somewhere in the silence, you can still feel God's fingerprints. not in the outcome, but in the exit. This isn't about pretending it didn't hurt, or forcing yourself to feel grateful before you're ready. It's about trusting that even the shut door is part of the altar. Some of the most powerful altars in Scripture were built in the middle of wilderness, not at arrival points, but at moments of raw surrender. So maybe this door is yours, your place of holy letting go, of sacred trust, of divine pause. And maybe, by blessing what's behind you, you make room for what's ahead. Not with control, but with reverence. Not with certainty, but with surrender. Bless the door, even if it stayed shut. Even if you still don't know why. Even if you never will. Because in the kingdom, what we bless, God transforms. It didn't all change at once. Even though the door closed suddenly, the redirection came slowly, step by uncertain step. That's how God moves sometimes. Not in maps, but in rhythms. You weren't abandoned. You were being led, not pushed, not forced, led by a shepherd who walks at the pace of your heart. You wanted clarity. He offered cadence. You wanted answers. He gave you breath. It's frustrating when we don't get the full picture, but redirection is rarely a straight line. It's a dance, a flow, a returning to a pace you didn't know you had forgotten. There's a rhythm to heaven, and it doesn't match the urgency of the world. It doesn't match your timeline, your deadlines, or your pressure. It matches your soul. And when God redirects you, He's not just changing your circumstances. He's shifting your inner tempo, slowing you to the speed of trust, of presence, of grace. You may not know where this is going, but you're not lost. You're being led into alignment, not through control, but through rhythm. You step, you pause, you breathe, you listen, and somehow the next stone appears beneath your feet. Don't rush it. Don't fear the detour. The road may look unfamiliar, but the guide has not changed. He's leading you, not in lightning, but in heartbeat, not in explanations, but in sacred rhythm. So walk slowly, stay near, and trust that every step, even the confusing ones, is forming the shape of your calling. This isn't a delay, it's choreography, and your spirit is learning how to dance again. It's one thing to trust what you see, it's another to trust what never showed up. The call that didn't come, the opportunity that vanished, the yes that turned into silence, the prayer that still echoes unanswered. 0, 6. This is where faith matures. In the empty spaces, in the what ifs, in the waiting rooms of heaven where no one tells you how long it'll be. We're conditioned to celebrate the visible, open doors, sudden blessings, miracles we can photograph. But what about what didn't happen? Can you trust that too? Because sometimes the greatest move of God is the thing He withheld, the relationship He didn't allow, the platform He didn't give, the timeline He didn't meet. You may never know what was on the other side of that almost, but God knows. And He chose not to give it, not because you were unworthy, but because you were worth too much. There's a kind of divine mercy that hides its logic, a protection that doesn't come with explanation, only presence, only peace if we're still enough to feel it. And maybe that's what he's doing now, inviting you to a deeper trust, one that doesn't need evidence, one that doesn't demand a why, one that says, even if I never see what you saved me from, I still trust you. It's not blind, it's surrendered, and there's power in that, because trusting what didn't happen is trusting that God is always doing more than we can see, more than we prayed for, more than we imagined, and far more than we'll ever fully understand this side of eternity. So take a breath. You're not late. You're not forgotten. You're not being punished. You're being protected, even from what never came. This isn't your first closed door. It just feels louder than the others, because this time you were more invested, more hopeful, more sure. But take a breath and remember, you've been here before, standing at the edge of an ending, heart aching, eyes searching, faith flickering like a fragile flame. And still, you made it through, not because you had all the answers, but because grace carried you, because something deeper held you upright when you didn't know how to keep standing. Let memory anchor you, not in the pain but in the pattern. God showed up then. He'll show up again. This isn't about repeating the past. It's about redeeming the pattern, seeing that even when things fell apart before, they eventually made sense, or brought something unexpected that turned out better. Maybe not in the way you prayed, but in the way you needed. You've walked through valleys. You've lost things you thought you couldn't live without. And still, you're here, not broken, but wiser, softer, more aligned. You've felt the silence before and survived it. You faced the unknown and found peace anyway. That strength isn't gone. It's in you, buried beneath the ache, ready to rise again. Don't underestimate what you've already endured. It wasn't just suffering. It was shaping. It was preparation. And now, when everything in you wants to panic, you can pause instead. Because you've been here, and you remember, God has never wasted your pain. This isn't the end. It's the familiar beginning of a new chapter, one you already know how to walk through, with grace. You can feel it now, the truth that was hiding beneath the grief. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't failure. It was rescue. The sudden end, the closed door, the silence where you expected celebration. It wasn't the enemy. It was God stepping in without asking your permission to save you. And maybe that's the most sacred kind of love, the kind that interrupts, the kind that removes what you would have held too long, the kind that protects before you even know you're in danger. You didn't see it as kindness then, but now, with space, with breath, with time, you can feel it differently. The redirection wasn't a detour. It was the true path. The delay wasn't a punishment. It was a pause for preservation. And the door that shut without explanation, it was heaven saying, "Not this way, beloved. I have more for you. More wholeness, more rest, more purpose, more peace. You may never know what could have happened if you stayed. But you don't need to, because now you know you didn't miss a miracle. You were the miracle. Rescued, recentered, realigned, because God never stopped watching, never stopped guiding, never stopped loving. So let the tears come not just from pain, but from recognition that even the endings were drenched in mercy, that even the silence was speaking, that even the no was grace in disguise. Now you see, and now you're ready to stop calling it loss and start calling it love. Let's pause here, not to explain more, but to exhale, to breathe in what's been spoken and breathe out what we no longer need to carry. You've heard the truth now, not just with your ears, but with your spirit. Some doors close quietly, but they save you loudly. You see that now. You feel it, not all at once, but enough to begin again softer, slower, stronger. So let's pray. Let this final moment be less about answers, 0, 4, and more about alignment. God of mercy, thank you for every quiet rescue, for the doors I didn't understand but can now begin to bless, for the exits I didn't choose but that carried me to safety I couldn't see. Give me vision to see not just what's in front of me, but what's been protecting me all along. Give me trust to believe that what didn't happen was never wasted. Teach my heart to slow down, to walk in rhythm with your spirit, not the urgency of this world. Help me release what I tried to force and receive what you're unfolding, even when it comes wrapped in silence. And when the ache returns, because it will remind me that I've survived before, that I've been carried, that you are always near, even when the path disappears. I trust you again, Lord, not because I understand, but because I remember. You've been faithful before. You'll be faithful again. Amen. Now, just sit with that. You don't need to move quickly. Let the silence finish what the words began. And if this video met you in the middle of a quiet ache, know this: you weren't forgotten. You were being held. That door didn't close to hurt you. It closed to keep you, to redirect you, to realign you with peace. Stay with that peace. Stay with this rhythm. And if your soul is ready to keep walking gently, with sacred pauses and holy reminders, you're not alone. Stay close with us at Calm Called, so when the next whisper of truth comes, your heart is already open to receive. Subscribe now, and let's keep unfolding this journey together.